Welcome back to the Midnight Hour, everybody. I'm Blaze, and we're going to be talking about something that's always given me the creeps.
Ooh, sounds intriguing.
Oh, it is. We're diving into the world of haunted dolls. You know, those creepy toys with a supernatural secret?
I'm Electra, and I have to agree, there's something uniquely unsettling about a childhood toy harboring, well, something sinister.
It's like that feeling you get when you see a ventriloquist dummy move on its own in a movie. You know it's not real, but still, chills down your spine.
Absolutely.
So for this deep dive, we've got two really famous cases to unpack. Robert the doll and that frozen Elsa doll that's been making the rounds on the internet.
Ooh, both fascinating cases.
Where do we even begin?
Well, I think Robert is a great place to start. He's like the granddaddy of haunted dolls, with a history stretching back over a century.
Okay, so for those who haven't heard of Robert, give us the Spark Notes version. What's his deal?
So picture this. 1904, the Steiff Company, those famous German toy makers, they create this doll.
Yeah, I've heard of him. Really high quality stuff.
Exactly. And this doll, he ends up as a birthday gift to a young boy named Robert Eugene Otto in Key West, Florida. And that's where the legends begin.
Legends. What kind of legends are we talking about here?
Well, get this. People say they've seen Robert change his facial expressions, giggling, moving around on his own, like the whole 9 yards. And some people even blame him for causing all sorts of bad luck.
Wait, hold on. Are we talking like spilling your coffee, bad luck, or something more serious?
Oh no, we're talking serious misfortunes, car accidents, broken bones, even divorce.
Whoa, people are blaming a doll for their divorce. That's a whole new level of doll drama.
Right. But there's a long history of people attributing power to objects, especially dolls. It's like they become vessels for our anxieties and fears.
I guess I can see that. I mean, there's something about dolls. They're not quite human, but they're not quite not human either, right?
That's exactly it.
So where's Robert now? Did they lock him away somewhere?
Actually, he's on display at the East Martello Museum in Key West.
Really? People can go see him.
They can, and they can even take pictures with him. But, and this is a big but, they have to ask Robert's permission first.
Wait, are you serious?
Yeah.
People actually talk to this doll for permission to take a picture.
It's a tradition. Museum staff say that those who take a picture without his consent, well, they tend to experience some pretty bad luck.
No way. So, I just snap a selfie with Robert and suddenly I'm tripping over my shoelaces for the rest of the week.
Well, let's just say it's best not to risk it.
Okay, now I get why you said his reputation precedes him.
It's all part of the mystique, right? But thinking about it logically, have you ever noticed how our minds sometimes play tricks on us? Like you see a face in a power outlet or think you hear your name whispered in the wind?
Oh, all the time. Drives me crazy sometimes.
Right. Well, that's a psychological phenomenon called pareidolia. Our brains are wired to find meaning in random stimuli.
So maybe people are seeing Robert's expression change or feeling like he's watching them because their brains are filling in the blanks.
It's definitely a possibility, but there's also something to be said for the power of stories and beliefs. Like those stories about Robert have given him a presence that goes beyond just being a doll.
So it's not just about whether he's actually haunted or not. It's about the meaning people have given him over the years.
Precisely. And that meaning can be very real, very powerful. Think about it. Robert's been featured at paranormal conventions, appeared on Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum, even inspired a horror film franchise. He's tapped into something that resonates with people.
That's a good point. He's a cultural icon, a symbol of our fascination with the unexplained.
Exactly. And his story, it raises some pretty big questions about, the nature of belief, the power of suggestion. It makes you wonder about the line between imagination and reality.
Well, I think we've unpacked Robert pretty thoroughly. What about that frozen Elsa doll?
Oh, that's a whole other can of worms, but a fascinating one nonetheless. It brings the whole haunted doll thing into the 21st century.
And probably freaks out a lot of parents in the process. Okay, so tell me, what makes this Elsa doll so spooky?
Okay, so this Elsa doll story, it comes from a woman named Emily Madonia. Back in 2019, she shared her experience about this doll. It had been a Christmas gift for her daughter a few years earlier. But then things started to get a little strange.
Strange how, was it singing off-key or something? I mean, Let It Go can get a little grating after a while.
Haha. No, not quite that. At first, the doll worked like normal, singing Let It Go in English, like you'd expect. But then Madonia said it started switching between English and Spanish. And not just that, it was doing this even when it was turned off.
Wait a minute. Bilingual Elsa?
Yeah.
Was there like a language setting they missed or something?
Madonia was adamant that there wasn't. And get this, it gets weirder. They tried throwing the doll away multiple times, and it kept coming back to the house.
Okay, now that's a little creepy. Sounds like something straight out of a horror movie. Did they, like, ever try just smashing it?
Apparently, they even mailed it to a friend in Minnesota, hoping to get rid of it once and for all.
Problem solved, right? Out of sight, out of mind.
Not so fast. The doll showed up on the friend's doorstep a few days later.
Okay, now that is just bizarre. Like, really bizarre. What was going on? Any chance it was like an elaborate prank?
Well, eventually they reached out to a paranormal investigator, a Dr. Lawrence Mills. He performed a cleansing ritual trying to, sever any attachments the doll might have.
A cleansing ritual? You mean like burning sage and chanting and stuff?
Exactly. It's something that's done in a lot of different spiritual traditions to purify things or places, get rid of negative energy or entities that might be hanging around.
So they were pretty convinced this Elsa doll was actually haunted. What do you think? Could a kid's toy really be possessed by some kind of spirit or whatever?
It's interesting, right? When you compare it to Robert the doll, there are some similarities. Both dolls acting in ways that you can't explain, causing all this unease and being almost impossible to get rid of. But with the Elsa doll, we have to consider the possibility of, electronic malfunctions? Or, maybe even just a really elaborate prank.
Yeah, that's true. But even if it was a prank, someone went to a lot of trouble, huh?
For sure. But this whole thing, it makes you think about how we relate to dolls, especially as kids. That line between what's real and what's make-believe, it can get really blurry.
I guess we project our emotions onto them, give them names, invent stories. It's like we're giving them a life of their own.
Exactly. So then when something weird happens, it's easy to jump to, supernatural conclusions.
Right. And those conclusions, they're influenced by all the stories we've heard, the movies we've seen, the things we believe in. Yeah, it's like we're almost predisposed to believe that dolls can be haunted, even if there's a perfectly normal explanation.
And that brings us back to this whole psychology of belief thing. What is it about haunted dolls that fascinates us so much? Why do they tap into those deep-seated fears and anxieties?
Maybe it's something about the way they look. Dolls that are almost human, but not quite. There's something unsettling about that.
Uncanny valley effect.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I've definitely felt that, uneasy feeling around some dolls.
Oh, it's a real thing. Our brains are wired to recognize human faces and expressions, When a doll mimics those features, but not perfectly, it creates this kind of dissonance, like a mismatch between what we expect and what we actually see.
And that mismatch can trigger like a primal fear response. Like our subconscious is telling us something's off.
Exactly. It's like those ancient instincts kicking in, warning us about danger, and those stories about haunted dolls, they amplify that feeling of unease. It becomes a whole feedback loop of fear and fascination.
So it's not just about the dolls themselves, it's the context, the stories we tell about them, and the beliefs that we bring to the table.
Right. It's this fascinating interplay of psychology, culture, and individual perception.
It's interesting. Haunted doll stories exist all over the world. There are tales of cursed dolls in Japan, possessed puppets in Europe, haunted figurines in Africa. This fear of animated objects, it seems to be a universal thing.
I think it speaks to this deeper anxiety we have about life and death, that boundary between what's alive and what's not. Dolls, they occupy a strange space in our minds. Think about it, they're often our first companions, and we imbue them with this sense of life through our imaginations.
So when that sense of life gets distorted, even threatening, it can be really disturbing. Like something we thought we understood has been violated.
And it's even more disturbing when you're talking about something as innocent as a child's toy, right? It taps into this fear of losing control, the idea that something meant to be comforting could turn against us.
That's a good point. It's like the ultimate betrayal of trust. I'm starting to feel a little creeped out myself now.
But it's also important to remember, these are just stories, and we have the power to choose how we interpret them.
True. We can choose to be terrified by these stories, or we can be fascinated by them, explore them with a sense of curiosity.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance between skepticism and open-mindedness, embracing the mystery while staying grounded in logic and evidence.
So what do you think? Are haunted dolls real? Are they just figments of our imaginations? Or are they something else entirely? It's the question, isn't it? The big one. Are haunted dolls real? I gotta say, after all this, I'm still not totally sure what to think.
And that's fine. I mean, that's part of what makes this whole topic so interesting, you know? We're exploring the edges of what we know, what we think we know.
Yeah, it's like we're all kind of drawn to the mystery of it, the possibility that there might be something more out there, something we don't quite understand yet.
And that's what these deep dives are all about, right? Making us think, looking at things from different angles, and just being open to the unknown.
You know, earlier in the deep dive, we asked you, the listener, a question. If you could ask Robert the doll or the Elsa doll one question, what would it be?
It's a good question. One that makes you really think. What would you want to know? Would you want proof that they're really haunted? Or maybe you'd want to hear their story, what they've been through.
Maybe you just want to know, are they really evil? Or have they just gotten a bad rap? It's interesting to think about how our own, beliefs and biases would shape the questions we ask.
Absolutely. And the answers we get or don't get would probably just lead to even more questions, wouldn't they?
That's how it always goes with the paranormal, right?
Yeah.
More questions than answers.
True, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it's the journey that matters.
So where does this all leave us? What's the big takeaway from our deep dive into the world of haunted dolls?
Well, I think we've seen how these stories, whether they're real or not, can tap into some really deep-seated fears. They make us think about how little control we actually have, that blurry line between being alive and, well, not being alive. And they make us look at our relationship with these objects that look so much like us.
We've also talked about how our minds work, how the things we believe and the stories we hear can influence our experiences.
And maybe most importantly, I think we've been reminded that it's okay to be curious, to ask questions, to acknowledge that there might be things out there we haven't figured out yet.
Well said. And to you, our listener, I want to leave you with this thought. The next time you come across a doll that looks a little too real, a little too knowing, remember, it's just an object.
But it's also a reflection of us, you know? Our hopes and fears, our desire to understand what we don't know, and our need to connect to something bigger than ourselves.
Until next time, this is Blaze,
And Electra.
signing off for the Midnight Hour. Sleep well and sweet dreams.